Good afternoon, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Numbers, and today we are covering the second part of a two-part 28 and 29 with regards to the specific appointments or appointed times that God has for the Israelites. Now, let us just take stock of what we had talked about last week when we began chapter 28 and now into chapter 29 in a fair detailed way of expressing this. These are what we call appointed times, right? Appointed times. Or we can call it, or I would like to call it, appointments. Basically, these are specific times of the year, exactly what God wants them to do with regards to certain rituals. And these are very specific to what God wants. Now, appointments come in a few ways, right? Appointed times of doing things and appointments to meet God. So, appointed times to do things. So there are two specific areas here. When we started last week and we looked at chapter 28, there were daily sacrifices, there were Sabbath sacrifices, there were beginning of the month sacrifices, and then there are specific times of the year. For example, in the first month of the year, then on the 14th day, we have the Passover. And all these are what we call stacked appointed times, where the sacrifices are stacked upon each other. Meaning, if there were two sacrifices in a normal day and the night, at the beginning of the day and the sunset, then there will be others that will be done in between, right? In between. And so there are specific things to do and there are specific appointments to meet God. Now, we are drawn to recall in chapter 1 of the book of Genesis when God made the sun, moon, and stars, when He put them in place, when He put them all there, the sun, moon, and stars. Very much so, we had an English translated word called seasons. But that's not the meaning. The meaning is really appointed times or appointments. They are in fact uh, placed there so that the children of Israel will know when to do what things, when to meet God. And so all of these are told to us that there is a rule. God's land, God's rule. Now, we may not be aware of it, but this is exactly how God has it. When God brought them out of Egypt and now into His land, always remember the promised land, the land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is a piece of land that belongs to God and will always belong to God. But it was given to the children of Israel to possess and to dispossess those who were there. And then they were to pass it down to the next generations. But it is always God's land because God had appointed rules like all these. And that's what we are reading in chapter 28 and 29. What God wants them to do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on an annual basis. And these are things that they must not forget. Why? Because all these are to remind the children of Israel that the land belongs to God. And they are a people who belongs to God, and as a people who belongs to God, they are to reflect what God has appointed them to do. And hence, that is the core theme of chapters 28 and 29. As we begin in chapter 29 of the book of Numbers, We're now brought to the seventh month. When we were there in chapter 28, we were talking about the first month of the year. Now they have to count another six more new moons. And then on the first of the moon, right? On the first of the moon, then you can count evening, morning, first day. And so all of these are done so that God can see how the Israelites are to remember the appointments of God and to display the obedience to God. Now, these are not difficult things to do, right? God didn't ask them to climb the mountain or swim the seas, but by doing so, will reflect their dedication towards God. And they have the priests to handle much of all the rituals. But God wants the entire nation to remember. So we had done the first month, now the seventh month. Now, these are not the most comprehensive. If you go back and read Leviticus chapter 23, you find some more information and a few more times that they are to meet God as well. And so God says on the seventh month, on the first day of the month, you shall have a holy convocation. You all come together, and it's a special gathering. You shall do no customary work. What does customary work? It's like the Sabbath, right? That when the Sabbath comes on the seventh day of the week, you are not to do what you normally do. So if you are a builder, you're not to build. The only thing that you can do during these days is to prepare food for the family. And God says, it is a day of blowing the trumpets. Now, this idea of blowing the trumpets, the word here is actually, this word here, blowing the trumpets, is actually teruah. And so you may have heard this word before, that there is a day of teruah. Now, the word teruah doesn't necessarily mean blowing the trumpet. Basically, it literally means a signal of an alarm. Now, it is a signal, a day of signal of alarm. But in this case, an alarm of joy. There are two kinds of alarm, obviously. There is an alarm of joy and there is an alarm of war. And so on the first day of the seventh month, it is a symbol of joy. So this would be a cry of joy, a shout of joy. They could be blowing the shofar for joy, for jubilee. It's a day of making noise. That's basically what this day is all about. Interestingly, this is also their Rosh Hashanah. This is their new year as well, on the first day of the seventh month, and this would be the civil new year. So in today's calendar, Rosh Hashanah is on the same day as the Teruah, right? Yom Teruah. And God tells them, this is again what you need to do: offer a burnt offering as a sweet aroma to the Lord. Now, again, if you recall last week, the sweet aroma is a spirit of appeasement. It is a, a spirit, a breath, and the English will call it an aroma, but very much it is a scent. It is something that you can't see, but you can actually smell. And it is sweet. Well, in this case, it is not sweet as in sugar sweet. The English word, a sweet aroma, is the equivalent of something that is very soothing, something that is very, very quieting, something that provides a restful environment. And so this is, in short, it is like a spirit of appeasement. It is a soothing smell to the Lord. And so God will find this very soothing. Again, the ritual of one young bull, one ram, which is a male sheep, and 7 lambs in the first year. Very important. These are the young ones within their first year, without blemish. I think the highlight for every of these sacrifices is without blemish. The idea of without blemish is that they are whole, and I think we can use the word they are perfect, right? They are perfect. It means that they are not blind, they're not impaired, they're not lame, they don't have one eye stuck together. They are healthy, they're not ill. And the reason why it needs to be this way is that they need to recognize who they are approaching. You see, when you approach someone who is very mighty, like a king, when you go and see the king, you don't bring a sick lamb as a gift. You will bring the best in your flock. And so God says the best in your flock are those that is perfect. That's what I want. So when you come to me, you bring me these things as a sign of goodwill, as a sign of thanksgiving, but very much so as a sign of honor to Elohim. Elohim means the mighty one, the one that they recognize who is their God. And so they pay close attention to what they bring to God. So you notice that the rituals that God wants them to do, it's not that they devise this. We have to really correct our mindset if we think that the children of Israel is just inventing some sacrifice rituals. They did not. These are rituals that are demanded by God, devised by God, and and declared by God. Then there is their grain offering, right? Of their flour, of fine flour mixed with olive oil, 3/10 of ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, 1/10 each for the 7 lambs. So it's 7 plus 2, right? And 3. So 7, 2, and 9, and 3. So it becomes 12, right? 12/10. So there is a fair amount of grain offering, which is mixed with oil, for this kind of an offering. And also 1 kid of the goat. So you have the sheep and the goats. And goats, as I mentioned the last week, goats are always devised for sin offering. Always. You would not find lamb or sheep for sin offering. It is always goats for sin offering to make atonement for you. Now, besides the burnt offering with its grain offering for the new moon, which is the beginning of the month, as you notice, the regular burnt offering with its grain offering, the drink offerings, remember, in verse 6, where it says the drink offering, uh, this is really a strong drink, right? This is wine or strong drink. And these are the drink offerings on a daily basis. So you notice it's stacked according to their ordinance as again, a sweet aroma, a spirit of appeasement, an offering made by fire to the Lord. And this is again a fire offering. You notice what is happening is there is fire, and there is aroma. There are two things here. So let me just briefly recall this. All right. There is a sweet aroma, a spirit, a spirit of appeasement, a fire offering, and a fire offering will have smoke as well because it rises up. This is basically what God wants, and they are to do exactly what God wants. So, chapters 28 and 29 might appear to us as wow, there's so many things that they are asked to do. But it is more important for us to realize that it is for them to demonstrate the recognition of who God is. And if they can't do this, then why do they deserve the land? And so God, in exchange for the land, wants them to demonstrate to the people around them that are living in the nations around them that there is a living God that they worship, and is very specific. It is not developed by the priests. It is God who wants it done this way. And there is a period of time. How do you do certain things? And so all of this is very elaborate, and it comes from God. On this same month, the 10th day of this 7th month, you shall have another holy convocation. So you notice the 7th month is a busy month for the Israelites. This is a holy convocation, another gathering. And in this gathering, it says here, you shall afflict your souls, you shall not do any work. What do you mean, afflict your souls? It is a special day that you are to humble yourselves. It is a time of reflection of who you are before God. And so that is what it means by affliction. You are to be humbled. You are to look at yourself before God and look at what you have done before Him that isn't right. And you shall not do any work or any customary work. You shall present a burnt offering to the Lord. Again, a burnt offering would be an offering that you actually allow the smoke and the scent to rise up as a spirit of appeasement. So, what do you have for offering? One young bull, one ram, 7 lambs in their first year, and without blemish. You see, all of this requires them to be very careful. Whatever they do is without blemish. The grain offering with fine flour mixed with oil is the same ritual as the beginning of the month: 3/10 for a bull, 2/10 for a ram, 1/10 each for each of the 7 lambs, and then 1 kid of the goats as a sin offering, besides the sin offering for atonement, the regular burnt offering and his grain offering and their burnt offering. So understand this is the daily, and then this is a special atonement in verse 11. Now, in verse 11, you also note that it doesn't elaborate exactly how the Day of Atonement is held, but always remember, goats are for sin offering, never a lamb, never a lamb. It's always goats. So that is the ritual that God has set for the Israelites. Now, once we have passed the Day of Atonement, we come to verse 12, That was on the 10th day. This is on the 15th day of the 7th month. Again, I mentioned that is a busy day for them. You have a holy convocation, you gather together, no customary work. But in this particular case, it is slightly different. You will keep a feast to the Lord 7 days. Now, this one here, a feast. This word feast is actually made up of two Hebrew words. Two Hebrew words. There is a word called feast. There is a word called festival. Right? There are two words here, a feast and a festival. In both instances, it comes from a root word with the action of circling, jumping, which is a celebration. So a feast is really them coming together to dance, to jump, and to celebrate. And this is what God wants them to do. It's a celebration for 7 days. Wow, that's a fairly long time to celebrate. But it is the first time in all of the days that they are supposed to keep. Yes, they don't have any work to do. It is a special day. But in this particular day, they have gone past the humbling of the self actualization, the self judgment. And now they celebrate on the 15th day. God tells them to do this. You will present a burnt offering made by fire, as a spirit of appeasement to the Lord. In this case, 13, not one, but 13 young bulls. Not one ram, but 2 rams. 14 lambs in their first year, not 7. So this is really like a lot more animals for the offering. And they shall be, again, without blemish. The grain offering shall be fine flour mixed with oil. 3/10 for each of the 13 bulls. That's a lot of flour. 2/10 for each of the 2 rams. It's the same amount, but they are double the rams. 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs. And then 1 kid of the goats as a sin offering. There's also another sin offering, even on this day. Besides the regular burnt offering, grain offering, and drink offering, and this is their daily offering. So this on top of it, and this is a special day. This is a special day. Now, God also has said that on the 2nd day of this feast, 2nd day of the 7 days, then present 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs in the first year without blemish. Their grain offering, their drink offerings for the rams or the lambs by their number according to the statutes. All right. And it's important to note that it's 1 kid of the goats as a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering with this grain offering and their drink offerings. It's a lot of ritual that God has wanted on the first day, the 2nd day, and that's what they are presenting to God. Then on the 3rd day, again, you notice, you still do 11 now, 2 rams, 14 lambs. It's in a decreasing order, right? Without blemish, again, the grain offering, drink offering, and a sin offering of the goat. On the 4th day, 10 bulls. So you notice it's decreasing in bulls, but the rams and the lambs are the same. Without blemish, grain offering, drink offering, for the ordinance, 1 kid of the goat as sin offering. Remember, goats are used for sin offering besides the daily offerings. You notice on the fifth day, you get 9. On the sixth day, you get 8. On the seventh day, 7. All right. And we're not going to go through the details, but it's repeating itself to tell them exactly how to do it on 7 days. And so it starts on the first day and ends on the seventh day. And it's all of a celebration, jumping, dancing for 7 days. On the 8th day, you will have a sacred assembly. Now, what does that mean? A sacred assembly? Well, it is about coming together in a solemn assembling of themselves in a meeting, shall do no customary work like the first day. So the first day, and then on the 8th day, you do the same. You still have a burnt offering made by fire as a spirit of appeasement to the Lord. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs in the first year without blemish. Grain offering, drink offering for the bull, ram, lambs by their number according to the ordinance. The same process. They cannot forget this. But 1 goat as a sin offering, always a goat for sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering, grain offering, and drink offering, which is their daily, right? Besides the daily. Finally, we come to the end of this chapter, verse 39. He says, remember this, all these you shall present. This word is make, do. And it is not to just anyone, it is to God himself. And then it says, it is as their appointed feasts. Appointed feast means it's all their moed. It is of an appointed time, place, and manner. See, God doesn't leave these to their own plans, whims, and fancies. Why? As you can see, in every king's palace, when you go into a mighty person's domain, you don't invent what you want to do. It is not like visiting your neighbor. It is visiting a king. And when you visit a king, you follow the protocol of the king or the emperor. In this case, it's exactly the same. God is their king. When it comes to approach God, God has his protocol, and they have to follow the protocol. Just think of it. When you go and visit the Agong and you decide to abandon some of the protocol, you know that there is going to be a serious repercussion. Much less then it's God. And if you break what God tells you to do, then God will bring a serious repercussion upon them. Why? Because it is, after all, man coming to God. And when man comes to God, man needs to know who God is and to do exactly what God wants. And so God says, I have given you appointed times, appointed place, appointed manner and processes. Besides your vowed offerings, what is your vow offerings? These are from your vows. When you make promises to God, then you bring an offering for completeness. Then there will be the shalom, or what is called the peace offering. And your free will offerings, when you are giving thanksgiving to God, when you're happy with certain things and you want to give thanks to God, it's a free will offering, right? You bring willingly, not because God said so, but because you want so. And so it's interesting that there is such a concept called a free will offering. As your burnt offerings and your grain offerings, as your drink offerings, and your peace offerings. Remember, peace offerings has to do with vow offering. This one here is to do with the vow offerings. All right. So let's observe verse 14. Moses told the children of Israel everything. Moses mentions all this to the sons of Israel, all the things that God has instructed. So this is all that God instructed. Now they have a divine protocol. What do you do when you come and meet your king? And what was this? Just as the Lord commanded Moses. It was what God told Moses exactly what to do. And Moses then relayed this to the children of Israel and to their descendants and their descendants to come. All that God has instructed so that they are to recognize who God is. That is the purpose of chapters 28 and 29. It is to remind them who God is. God's land, God's rules. At God's appointed time, the people of God are to perform certain rituals that will meet God's requirements. And so God gave it in detail so that they don't have to second guess. If they don't understand why, for example, on the 15th of the month, they start to have this particular celebration, a feast, or a celebration, and jump around and dancing for 7 days. And each of the days, they have to give an offering in a decreasing number from 14 bulls to 13 to 12 to 11, and then it reaches 7. And then God wants it done in a specific way. Why not the same? Because God wants them to be able to count. Counting is important. That it starts from 14, 13. It's like a countdown. And by the time you hit 7, you know the celebration is done. On the next day, which is the 8th day, you have a solemn gathering. No more jumping around. And so, what does all this mean then? It means this: God's land, God's rules. Just do as God says. Why? Because God is God and the children of Israel are mere men. To recall what God has done, to acknowledge who God is, and by observing it carefully and completely will demonstrate to God that the children of Israel cares about who God is, that they will listen to exactly what God wants and to perform according to exactly what he says. Nothing more, nothing less. And by doing so, God will be happy. God will be appeased. And all these sacrifices will mean something to God. And God will look upon the children of Israel in a favorable manner. All of these is to remind them of who God is. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.